Saudi Arabia's The Line mega project is currently under construction and is progressing steadily going into 2025. But while they are relatively on track, there's major issues looming that the project will have to tackle. That's why today we'll dive deep into what the line will achieve in 2025 and if it will be completed at all. For those who are not familiar with the concept of the line yet, think of a city stretching 170 kilometers in a straight line, right across the deserts of northwest Saudi Arabia. There are no roads, no cars, and no carbon emissions. Instead of sprawling horizontally like every other city, it's designed to grow upwards, stacking living spaces vertically. This means people will live in high-tech, interconnected layers, with homes, offices, and even schools stacked on top of one another. And because the city is just 200 meters wide, everything you need will be within a 5-minute walk. No traffic jams, no commutes, and no smog hanging over the skyline. But what's really blowing people's minds is the cutting-edge technology at the heart of this city. The line will integrate artificial intelligence into everyday life, making the city not just smart, but intuitive. The line wants to show the world that there's a better way to live. It's a bold attempt to rethink what cities can be, how they should interact with the environment, and how people can live happier lives. Now let's dive into recent construction developments. Big ideas like this don't just happen overnight, and they definitely don't happen without the right team. Recently, the organization behind the line, called NEOM, announced some major partnerships with top-tier firms to handle the design, planning, and engineering of this futuristic city. First up is Delegan Meisel Associated Architects, or DMAA for short. These guys are leading the urban design for Phase 1 of the line. Then there's Gensler, a global powerhouse in design and planning. Gensler's job is to make sure the line stays on track, literally and figuratively. They're acting as the city planning consultants, which means they're overseeing everything from land use policies to compliance with design standards. And finally, there's Mott MacDonald, a name you've probably heard if you follow major engineering projects. These guys are handling the nuts and bolts of the line's infrastructure. They're the ones making sure the city's utility systems, vertical structures, and other essential components are not only functional, but also sustainable. As we head into 2025, these partnerships will kick into high gear, with neighborhood planning and design set to begin early in the year. This is when the big ideas start turning into reality. Architects will be brought on board to design individual neighborhoods, adding their own creativity to the mix while staying true to the overarching vision. Right now, the line's construction is advancing at an astonishing pace, with over 120 foundation piles being cast into the ground every week. To put this into perspective, that's one of the largest piling operations ever undertaken anywhere in the world. Imagine the scale of work required to make that happen. The precision, the manpower, and the cutting-edge technology all working in sync to create the foundation for this futuristic city. The piling process itself is an engineering marvel. Each foundation pile acts like a giant anchor, driven deep into the earth to provide an unshakable base for the massive vertical structures that will rise above. These piles are made from reinforced concrete and are carefully placed with millimeter-level precision to ensure stability and long-term durability. Since the line's entire design relies on its vertical stacking system, the strength of these piles is absolutely critical. The process of building the line starts with something that might seem straightforward at first glance, but is anything but simple: preparing the site. Engineers arrive with cutting-edge machinery, ready to drill deep shafts into the desert ground. These shafts, sometimes reaching incredible depths, are then filled with high-strength concrete to form piles. These piles are the backbone of the entire structure. They're designed to support an immense amount of weight, and I'm talking about the weight of a future city that will house millions of people. Teams of workers, advanced machinery, and supervisors monitoring every step to ensure everything is just right. Each pile has to be measured, inspected, and reinforced meticulously. There's no cutting corners here, because in a project of this scale, even the tiniest mistake could lead to disaster down the road. Now, consider where all this is happening: the Saudi desert. We're talking about some of the harshest conditions you can imagine: blazing heat, constantly shifting sands, and even the potential for seismic activity. These aren't just minor inconveniences, they're real challenges that demand top-tier engineering and planning. Every pile laid into the ground has to withstand these extremes and still form a foundation strong enough to support the incredible structures that will eventually rise above it. But this isn't just about laying down piles, it's about breaking records and redefining what's possible in urban development. The line is operating on a scale that's hard to comprehend. Think about it. Most cities take decades to build infrastructure on this level. Roads, utilities, foundations. These things take years, sometimes even generations, to complete. But here, they're doing it in record time. It's not just the speed that's impressive, it's how they're achieving it. They're using advanced robotics, AI-powered monitoring systems, and next-gen construction technologies to make it happen. Once the piles are in place, they can start building upward. And that's when things get even more exciting. The massive vertical structures that will define the line, residential buildings, commercial centers, transport hubs, all of these will sit atop this rock-solid foundation. As we look ahead to 2025, the line's development is set to enter a groundbreaking new phase. Early in the year, neighborhood planning will officially begin, marking a major step toward turning this ambitious urban vision into reality. This is where the world's top architects and urban planners will truly shine, shaping the individual communities that will make up this futuristic city. The process of neighborhood planning is far from typical. In most cities, urban growth happens gradually, with individual projects developed one at a time. But the line is different. Neighborhood planning will happen on a massive scale, with multiple architectural teams working simultaneously to create entire districts designed to fit seamlessly into the city's unique vertical structure. Architects working on the line aren't just designing buildings, they're shaping an entirely new way of life. Each neighborhood will be designed to put sustainability, connectivity, and community at the forefront. Residential areas, office hubs, parks, and cultural spaces won't just coexist. They'll complement each other in a way that creates a seamless, enjoyable living experience. The idea is to make life so convenient and fulfilling that everything you need, whether it's work, leisure, or relaxation, is just a short walk away. When the line was first announced, it was hailed as a $500 billion marvel, a city that would redefine urban living. But like many ambitious projects, the reality of bringing this futuristic vision to life has revealed some financial hurdles that no one could ignore. Recent estimates suggest the cost might balloon into the trillions. Yes, you heard that right, trillions. That's a far cry from the original budget and raises big questions about how feasible this grand project really is. It's one thing to dream big, but when the price tag keeps climbing, even Saudi Arabia, with its deep pockets, has to pause and rethink. And that's exactly what seems to be happening. Word on the street is that the line may not reach its full 170-kilometer stretch, at least not anytime soon. Instead, there are reports that the project might scale back significantly with a smaller 2.4-kilometer segment targeted for completion by 2030. That's a tiny fraction of the original plan, and it's not just about numbers. Scaling back changes the entire scope of what the line was meant to represent. It was pitched as a sprawling, linear city that could house 9 million people and function as a global model for sustainable living. Reducing it to just a fraction could dilute the impact of the vision and turn what was supposed to be a groundbreaking project into something much smaller in scale and influence. So, what's next? how do you keep the dream alive when the costs are this steep? Well, Saudi Arabia is exploring several strategies to keep the momentum going. One option is bringing in foreign investors, something that's already happening to an extent. But attracting the level of investment needed for a project this massive isn't easy, especially with global economic uncertainties. Another possibility is forming public-private partnerships, where private companies chip in funding in exchange for a stake in the project or its future revenues. This approach has worked for other large-scale developments around the world, but it's not without challenges. Investors need to be convinced that the line isn't just a pie-in-the-sky idea, but a viable, profitable venture. When you think about a futuristic project like the line, it's easy to get caught up in the hype, bold ideas, cutting-edge technology, and promises of a better, greener future. But there's another side to this story that's harder to ignore, one that casts a shadow over all that ambition. Beneath the glittering surface of innovation, there are real, human stories of displacement and exploitation that deserve attention. It's not just about what's being built, but about who pays the price along the way. Let's start with the Huwaitat tribe, an indigenous community that has lived in the northwest region of Saudi Arabia for centuries. When the line was announced, this area was chosen as the site for the groundbreaking city. For the Saudi government, it was an opportunity to transform the desert into a marvel of urban design. But for the Huwaitat people, it meant losing their ancestral land. Reports emerged that families were being forcibly removed to make way for construction, with little to no consultation or consent. Imagine being told to leave the place your family has called home for generations, with no real say in the matter. That's exactly what many members of the tribe have experienced. The forced displacements have sparked outrage from human rights organizations around the world. Groups like Amnesty International have called on Saudi Arabia to stop these evictions and respect the rights of indigenous communities. But so far, the response from officials has been less than reassuring. Instead of addressing these concerns head-on, the focus has remained firmly on promoting the project's futuristic vision. It's a glaring oversight that many believe undermines the credibility of the entire endeavor. And then there's the workforce issue, which adds another layer of controversy. The sheer scale of the line requires a massive labor force, with tens of thousands of workers already involved in the construction process. But behind the scenes, there are troubling reports of labor exploitation. Some estimates suggest that over 21,000 workers have died since construction began. That's a staggering number, one that raises serious questions about safety standards and worker conditions. Many of these workers come from poorer countries, lured by promises of decent wages and steady work. But once on site, their reality can be very different. Long hours, harsh conditions, and inadequate safety measures are just the tip of the iceberg. In some cases, workers have reported being unable to leave or return home, trapped in contracts that leave them vulnerable to abuse. It's the kind of treatment that feels worlds apart from the polished, futuristic image the line wants to project. The question is, how has NEOM, the organization behind the line, responded to these allegations? Unfortunately, their reaction has been less than encouraging. Instead of publicly addressing the concerns, NEOM has largely remained silent on the issues of labor welfare and human rights. This silence sends a troubling message, suggesting that these problems are either being ignored or swept under the rug. For a project that's supposed to represent the future of urban living, this lack of accountability feels like a step backward. The Saudi government hasn't done much better in addressing these concerns. While officials continue to champion the line as a symbol of progress, there's little acknowledgement of the human cost involved. This refusal to engage with criticism not only hurts those directly affected, but also damages the project's reputation on a global scale. Internationally, the backlash has been significant. Human rights organizations activists, and even some governments have criticized Saudi Arabia for its handling of the line's development. The forced displacements and labor exploitation have been widely condemned, with many calling for greater transparency and accountability. The criticism doesn't just stay in the headlines, it affects how people view the project and the country as a whole. For Saudi Arabia, this kind of negative attention poses a real risk. The line is meant to showcase the kingdom's ability to lead the world in innovation and sustainability. But if the human rights concerns aren't addressed, the project could become more infamous than inspiring. Investors who are crucial to funding a mega project of this scale may hesitate to get involved if they see these controversies as a sign of instability or bad press waiting to happen. It's a tough spot for Saudi Arabia and NEOM to navigate. On one hand, they're under immense pressure to deliver on the promises of the line, a city that redefines how we live and interact with the environment. On the other hand, they can't ignore the growing chorus of voices demanding justice for those who've been displaced or mistreated. Balancing these two priorities isn't just a moral question, it's a strategic one. If they want the line to succeed, they'll need to take these concerns seriously and show the world that they're committed to doing things differently. So, where does that leave us? The line is still under construction, and its potential is undeniable. But as exciting as the vision may be, we can't forget about the human element. The success of any city isn't just measured by its architecture or technology, it's measured by how it treats its people. For the line to truly be a model for the future, it has to address the very real problems happening right now. That means listening to the Huaytat tribe, ensuring fair treatment for workers, and responding to criticism with action, not just words. As much as we might want to believe in the dream of the line, it's clear that the road ahead is complicated. The project has the potential to change the way we think about cities and sustainability, but only if it can rise above these challenges. Until then, the shadow of controversy will remain a part of its story, reminding us that even the most ambitious visions come with a cost. Let's just hope it's a cost worth paying for everyone involved. The line has been branded as a game changer in the world of urban development. Imagine a city that claims to produce zero carbon emissions, completely rethinking how people interact with the environment. It sounds like the future, doesn't it? A linear city, stretching for 170 kilometers, where everything you need is within walking distance, with no cars, no sprawling suburbs, and no pollution clouding the skies. That's the promise of the line, a vision of sustainability that could redefine how cities are built and operated. It's the kind of bold idea that makes headlines and gets people talking about what's possible. But as incredible as this vision is, it's not without its critics. Environmentalists and experts have been raising red flags about the potential risks involved in constructing a project of this magnitude in such a delicate ecosystem. The Red Sea region, where the line is being built, is home to an incredibly rich and diverse range of marine life, coral reefs, and desert ecosystems. These aren't just beautiful landscapes, they're critical to the planet's biodiversity and play an essential role in maintaining ecological balance. The question is, can the line live up to its promise of being a zero-carbon, sustainable city without causing irreversible harm to its surroundings? One of the biggest concerns is the sheer scale of the construction. Building a city of this size isn't as simple as putting up a few skyscrapers. It involves massive excavation, land development, and resource extraction. All of this disrupts the natural environment in ways that are hard to ignore. For example, the construction process could lead to the destruction of coral reefs in the Red Sea, which are some of the most pristine and biodiverse in the world. Coral reefs are incredibly sensitive to changes in their environment, and even small disturbances can have devastating effects. The noise, sedimentation, and pollution that come with large-scale construction could wipe out entire ecosystems before the line even becomes operational. And it's not just the marine life that's at risk. The desert where the line is being built is home to unique species of plants and animals that have adapted to survive in harsh conditions. Disrupting their habitat could lead to biodiversity loss on a significant scale. Once these ecosystems are damaged, they're incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to restore. The irony is hard to miss. A city that markets itself as a beacon of sustainability might end up causing environmental damage that lasts for generations. Critics have also pointed out the contradiction between the line's promises and the reality of its construction. On paper, a zero-carbon city sounds perfect, but achieving that level of sustainability requires more than just good intentions. The materials used in construction, the energy required to build and maintain the city, and the waste generated along the way all have a carbon footprint. Even if the line operates as a zero-carbon city once it's completed, the environmental cost of getting to that point might outweigh the benefits. Take the example of the reinforced concrete being used for the foundation piles. Concrete production is one of the largest sources of carbon emissions globally. While it's a necessary material for a project of this scale, its environmental impact can't be ignored. Similarly, the energy required to power the construction machinery, transport materials, and run the operations on site adds up quickly. When you consider all these factors, it's clear that the road to a zero-carbon city is far from straightforward. Environmentalists have also questioned whether the line's design is truly sustainable or just an impressive marketing pitch. For instance, the idea of stacking living spaces vertically to reduce urban sprawl is innovative, but it's not without its challenges. High-density living requires advanced systems for waste management, water recycling, and energy distribution. If these systems fail or aren't implemented effectively, the city could face serious sustainability issues down the line. There's also the matter of integrating green spaces into the city's design. The line has promised to blend technology with nature, creating a harmonious balance between urban living and the environment. But critics argue that planting a few trees or creating artificial parks isn't enough to compensate for the loss of natural habitats. True sustainability means working with the environment, not reshaping it to fit a human-centric vision. Another point of contention is the reliance on advanced technology to achieve sustainability goals. The line plans to use artificial intelligence and next-gen construction techniques to minimize its environmental impact. While these technologies have great potential, they're still relatively untested on a project of this scale. What happens if the technology doesn't deliver as expected? Or worse, what if it creates new problems that weren't anticipated? The line's success depends heavily on these systems working flawlessly, which is a big gamble considering the stakes. The criticism from environmental experts has been loud and clear. Many believe that the line's promises of sustainability, while ambitious, are overly optimistic. They argue that the project needs to focus more on mitigating its immediate environmental impact rather than banking on futuristic solutions to solve problems later. Transparency is also a major concern. For a project of this size and significance, there's been little public information about the steps being taken to protect the environment during construction. Without this transparency, it's hard to know whether the line is truly prioritizing sustainability or just using it as a selling point. But let's not dismiss the line entirely. The project represents a bold attempt to rethink how cities can be designed to minimize their impact on the planet. If it succeeds, it could set a new standard for urban development and inspire other cities to follow suit. The key is ensuring that its execution matches its vision. That means addressing the environmental risks head-on, listening to experts, and being honest about the challenges involved. At the heart of this ambitious project is the promise to use artificial intelligence, robotics, and smart systems to transform the way we live. Imagine waking up in a city where everything around you, your home, your transportation, even the parks you stroll through, is connected and responsive. Lights adjust based on your mood, AI predicts your needs before you even know them, and robots handle the mundane tasks of daily life. That's the dream the line is selling, a seamless blend of technology and urban living that promises to make life smarter, more efficient, and hopefully better. The vision is undeniably exciting. The line aims to integrate AI in ways that most of us can barely imagine. From managing traffic to optimizing energy use, AI will play a central role in making the city function. Robotics will handle everything from maintenance to deliveries, ensuring that human residents have more time to focus on what matters to them. The idea is that technology will take care of the logistics, leaving people free to thrive in a city designed for human happiness. But here's the thing. While all of this sounds amazing on paper, the reality of implementing these technologies on such a massive scale is a whole different story. We're not talking about adding a few smart features to an existing city. The line is being built from scratch, and it's designed to function in ways no other city ever has. That's a monumental challenge, and it raises a lot of questions about whether these ambitious goals can be achieved within the timeline the developers have set. Building a city that stretches 170 kilometers and operates entirely on AI and robotics isn't just ambitious, it's unprecedented. The technology required to make this work isn't fully developed yet, and integrating it into a single, cohesive system is a massive undertaking. While AI is incredibly powerful, the systems are still prone to errors, and their ability to scale up to manage an entire city's operations hasn't been proven. If the AI fails, whether due to technical glitches, cyber attacks, or simply the complexity of the task, it could disrupt the lives of millions of people. Robotics too presents its own set of challenges. Robots are great for specific, repetitive tasks, but building a city where they handle everything from waste management to food delivery requires a level of sophistication that's still being developed. And then there's the issue of reliability. Robots break down, need maintenance, and sometimes just don't work as intended. When you're dealing with something as critical as city infrastructure, even minor failures can have major consequences. One of the most pressing concerns, though, is the timeline. The developers of the line have set ambitious targets, with major milestones expected as early as 2025. That's just a few years away, and it's hard to see how all these advanced technologies can be developed, tested, and deployed at such a rapid pace. Building the physical structures of the city is already a monumental task. Adding a layer of cutting-edge technology on top of that makes it even more complex. It's not just about installing systems, it's about making sure they work flawlessly in real-world conditions. And that takes time. Another big question hanging over the line is one of privacy. In a city that relies so heavily on AI and smart systems, data collection is inevitable. Your movements, habits, preferences, and even personal interactions could all be tracked to optimize the city's operations. While this might sound convenient on the surface, it raises serious concerns about how that data will be used and who will have access to it. Will residents of the line be comfortable living in a city where every aspect of their lives is monitored? And what safeguards will be in place to protect their privacy?